His gaze burned right through her. His voice made her tremble. And then he made her an offer she couldn't refuse. Become his fake wife. But what happens when pretending starts to feel too real? If this story is touching your heart, leave a like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments where you're listening from. And if you feel it was really worth your time, click the super thanks button. Your gesture makes all the difference and helps us keep bringing you stories like this. Night fell heavy over the city, and the Carter and Cole Industries building rose like a giant of glass and steel, its illuminated windows flickering like distant, unreachable stars. Inside, on the upper floors, men in suits decided the fate of thousands. Down below in the basement and empty hallways, people like Lily Evans cleaned up the traces of that power. Lily was 24 years old, but her eyes carried the exhaustion of someone who had lived much longer. Her hands, reddened from constant contact with cleaning products, trembled slightly as she pushed the metal cart through the silent corridors of the 42nd floor. The strong smell of disinfectant, mixed with the aroma of cold coffee still lingering in the air, made her wrinkle her nose. It was 12:15 in the morning. Another night, another invisible shift. She hadn't chosen this life. Life had chosen her. Her mother, Margaret Evans, had been hospitalized for 3 months at St. Mary's Hospital, fighting an aggressive cancer that devoured her body day after day. Medical bills piled up like an impossible mountain to climb. Lily worked double shifts, during the day as a waitress at a busy cafe, at night as a cleaner. She slept 4 hours, if that, ate poorly, smiled rarely, but she kept going, because giving up meant letting her mother die. That night, as she mopped the gleaming marble floor of the executive corridor, she didn't expect her life to change. She expected nothing beyond the silence, the loneliness, and the weight on her shoulders. But then she heard a sound, a soft dragging of wheels against the floor. Lily lifted her eyes and saw the door to the main office slightly open. Golden light spilled through the crack. She frowned. That office should have been empty. All the executives had left hours ago. Hesitant, she approached. Her old sneakers made an almost imperceptible sound against the floor. Her heart beat a little faster. She pushed the door slowly, and what she saw made her stop in her tracks. A man sat in a wheelchair, his back to her, facing an entire wall of windows that revealed the city stretched out below like a carpet of lights. He wore a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, the muscles of his forearms visible even from a distance. His dark hair was slightly messy, as if he'd run his hands through it several times. There was a tension in his shoulders, a stiffness that spoke of sleepless nights and battles fought in silence. Lily tried to back away, but the cart hit the door with a metallic sound that echoed through the office. He turned the chair with a quick, precise movement, and then their eyes met. Lily felt the air leave her lungs. He was devastatingly handsome, not in the soft, gentle way you see in romantic movies, but in a raw, intense, almost dangerous way. Dark grey eyes that seemed to pierce right through her, as if they could read every thought, every fear, every secret she kept hidden. His jaw was strong, marked by stubble that gave him the air of a man who didn't care about appearances. His lips were firm, but there was a subtle curve there, as if he were about to smile or say something that would change everything. But what struck her most was the way he looked at her, not with pity, not with indifference. He saw her. "Sorry," Lily murmured, her voice coming out weaker than she intended. "I didn't know anyone was here. I can come back later." "No," he said, and his voice was deep, husky, like a rough whisper that ran down her spine. "Come in." She hesitated. "Please," he added, and this time there was something different in his tone. It wasn't an order. It was an invitation. Lily took a step inside, her hand still clutching the cleaning cloth as if it were a shield. The office was enormous, luxurious, with dark leather furniture and shelves filled with books she would never have time to read. The smell of polished wood and a subtle masculine cologne, something woody with notes of cedar and spices, filled the space. "Do you work here every night?" he asked, his eyes still fixed on her. "Yes," she replied, feeling the heat rise up her neck. "I'm on the cleaning crew." He nodded slowly, as if processing that information. Then he tilted his head slightly to the side, studying her with an attention that made her feel exposed. "What's your name?" "Lily," she said, almost in a whisper. "Lily Evans." He repeated the name, slowly, savoring each syllable. Lily. The way he said it did something strange inside her. Her name had never sounded like that, had never seemed important, but from his lips it seemed significant. "I'm Nathaniel Carter," he said, and she felt the shock run through her body. Nathaniel Carter, the CEO of Carter and Coal Industries, the man who commanded a multi-billion-dollar empire, the man she'd heard whispers about among the other employees, the paralyzed billionaire who, they said, was cold, ruthless, and impossible to please. But the man before her didn't seem cold. He seemed alive. "You don't look at me the way others do," Nathaniel said suddenly, and there was a strange vulnerability in his voice. Lily blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" "With pity," he explained, his eyes still locked on hers. "You don't look at me like I'm broken." She swallowed hard. She didn't know what to say. Then, without thinking much, the words came out. "That's because you're not broken." The silence that followed was thick, charged with something she couldn't name. Nathaniel watched her for a long moment, and then, for the first time, he smiled. It wasn't a full smile, just a subtle curve at the corner of his lips, but it was enough to make her heart race. "Sit down," he said, pointing to the leather chair in front of the desk. I need to finish cleaning." "Sit down, Lily." This time it wasn't a request. It was a promise that something important was about to happen. She obeyed, her legs trembling, and sat in the chair. Nathaniel moved closer, maneuvering the wheelchair with an ease that spoke of years of practice. He stopped right in front of her, so close that she could see the small lines around his eyes, the marks of someone who smiled little but felt deeply. "Why do you work here?" he asked, his voice softer now. Lily hesitated. She didn't usually talk about her life with anyone, but there was something about Nathaniel that made her want to tell him. Maybe it was the way he looked at her. Maybe it was the loneliness she recognized in him, reflected in her own. "My mother is sick," she finally said, her voice almost breaking. "Cancer. I need to pay for her treatment." Nathaniel said nothing for a moment. Then slowly, he reached out and touched her hand. The touch was electric. Lily felt every nerve in her body awaken. His hand was warm, firm, and his fingers wrapped around hers with an unexpected gentleness. "You're strong," he murmured, his eyes locked on hers. She shook her head. "I'm not. I'm just, surviving." "Surviving is the strongest way to live." His words hit her like a punch to the chest. Tears burned in her eyes, but she blinked quickly, trying to hold them back. Nathaniel squeezed her hand lightly, and then, with a slowness that seemed intentional, he lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it. It wasn't an ordinary kiss, it was reverent, delicate, as if he were sealing a promise. When he pulled away, his eyes were still fixed on hers, and there was something there that Lily couldn't decipher. Something dangerous, something inevitable. "Will you come back tomorrow night?" he asked, his voice husky. She nodded, unable to speak. "Good," he said, releasing her hand slowly, as if resisting the urge to hold it forever. Lily stood up, her legs shaky, and walked to the door. Before leaving, she looked back one last time. Nathaniel was still watching her, and the way he looked at her made her heart beat so hard she was sure he could hear it. When she finally left the office and closed the door behind her, Lily leaned against the wall, trying to catch her breath. Something had changed. She didn't know what, but she felt that nothing would ever be the same. The 3 days that followed that encounter were the strangest of Lily's life. She returned to the 42nd floor every night, as she always did. She cleaned the same hallways, wiped down the same desks, emptied the same trash cans. But something was different. She was different. Every time she passed by Nathaniel Carter's office door, her heart raced, her hands sweated, her breathing faltered. She found herself staring at that closed door, waiting, though she didn't know exactly for what. Maybe for him to appear again. Maybe to prove that moment had been real. But the door remained closed. The lights off. And Lily began to believe she had imagined it all, until the 4th night. She was in the hallway putting away the cleaning cart in the supply closet when she heard footsteps, or rather, the unmistakable sound of wheels gliding over marble. She turned quickly, and there he was. Nathaniel Carter. He wore an impeccable dark grey suit, his tie loosened, the first buttons of his shirt undone, revealing the base of his neck and the beginning of his chest. His hair was combed back, but some rebellious strands fell over his forehead. He had a serious, almost inscrutable expression, but there was something in his eyes, an intensity, a gleam, that made her feel like she was being hunted. "Lily," he said, and his voice sounded like low thunder in the silence of the hallway. She swallowed hard, her hands clutching the cleaning cloth. "Mr. Carter," she managed to reply, her voice trembling. He tilted his head slightly, his eyes scanning her face with an attention that left her breathless. "I need to talk to you," he said. "In my office, now." It wasn't a request, it was a summons. Lily hesitated for only a second before nodding. She followed him down the hallway, the sound of the wheelchair wheels echoing in the empty space. When they reached the office, he opened the door and entered, gesturing for her to follow. She went in, and the door closed behind her with a soft click that seemed to seal her fate. The office was lit only by a desk lamp and the city lights coming through the enormous windows. The atmosphere had an intimate, almost conspiratorial air. The smell of leather and his cologne, that woody, masculine scent she now recognized instantly, filled the space. Nathaniel moved the chair until he stopped right in front of her, so close that she could see the small golden flecks in his grey eyes. He studied her for a long moment, as if trying to decide something important. "Sit down," he finally said, pointing to the same leather chair she had sat in days ago. Lily obeyed, her heart beating so hard she was certain he could hear it. Her hands trembled slightly and she hid them in her lap. Nathaniel took a deep breath, his eyes still fixed on her, and then, with a disturbing calmness, he began to speak. "I'm going to be direct with you, Lily. I don't have time to beat around the bush, and I don't think you do either." She nodded, not knowing what to say. "I need a wife." The words fell like a bomb in the silence of the office. Lily blinked, confused, thinking she'd heard wrong. "What?" she whispered. Nathaniel didn't look away. "The board at Carter & Cole is trying to remove me as CEO," he explained, his voice firm, but with an undercurrent of contained anger. "They think that because of my condition I'm no longer capable of leading the company. They're pushing for me to step down, saying I don't have stability, that I don't have commitment." He paused, his jaw clenched. "But if I'm married, if I show that I have a stable personal life, they won't have arguments. I'll need someone by my side at public events, dinners, meetings, just enough to convince them that I'm fine, that I'm whole." Lily felt her head spinning. This couldn't be happening. "Why me?" she asked, her voice weak. Nathaniel leaned forward, his eyes piercing hers. "Because you look at me like I'm a man, not a wheelchair, not an invalid. A man." The intensity in his voice made her shudder. He continued, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. "And because you need money. I saw the way you talk about your mother. I know what it's like to fight for someone you love." Lily felt tears burn in her eyes, but she held them back. He was right. She needed money. Desperately. "What exactly are you proposing?" she asked, her voice trembling. Nathaniel leaned back in his chair, his fingers drumming lightly on the armrest. "A marriage contract. 1 year, maybe less if everything goes well. You'll be my wife publicly. You'll live in my house, appear with me at events, convince the board that we're a real couple." He paused, his eyes still fixed on her. "In return, I'll pay for all your mother's medical expenses. Full treatment, no limits. You'll also receive a generous monthly salary, and when the contract ends, you'll leave with enough money to never have to worry again." Lily felt her heart pounding in her temples. This was crazy, absurd, impossible, but it was also the answer to all her prayers. "What if I say no?" she asked, her voice almost inaudible. Nathaniel smiled, a sad, almost melancholy smile. "Then I'll respect your decision and never speak of it again." He moved closer again, and this time he reached out and lightly touched her arm. The touch was warm, firm, and sent waves of heat through her entire body. "But I hope you say yes, Lily, because I don't want anyone else. I want you." The way he said it, low, husky, loaded with something that went beyond a simple business agreement, made her stomach flip. Lily closed her eyes, trying to organize her thoughts. Her mother was dying. The bills were piling up. She was exhausted, broken, hopeless. And here was a man offering her a way out, a chance. But at what cost? She opened her eyes and found Nathaniel still watching her, his eyes full of an expectation he was trying to hide, but that she could see. "How long do I have to decide?" she asked. "Until tomorrow night," he replied. "I need a quick answer." Lily nodded slowly, feeling the weight of the decision crushing her. Nathaniel suddenly took her hand, intertwining his fingers with hers. The gesture was so intimate, so unexpected, that she gasped softly. "I know this is a lot to process," he said, his voice softer now. "But I promise I'll be fair to you. I promise I won't ask for anything beyond what's in the contract. And I promise that when it's all over, you'll have everything you need to live the life you deserve." He lifted her hand to his lips again, as he had done the night they met, and kissed it, slowly, reverently. When he pulled away, his eyes were dark, intense, full of a silent promise that made her heart race. "Think carefully, Lily," he whispered, "but know that if you say yes, I'll do everything in my power to make sure you never regret it." She left the office with shaky legs, her mind spinning, her heart beating irregularly. That night, Lily didn't sleep. She sat in the small apartment she shared with a roommate, staring at her phone, at the picture of her mother she had as her wallpaper. Margaret Evans was smiling in that photo, a weak smile, but still there, a smile that said she was still fighting. And Lily knew what she needed to do. The following night, she returned to Nathaniel's office with her heart in her throat. He was there, waiting as if he knew she would come. "So?" he asked, his voice controlled, but his eyes revealing anxiety. Lily took a deep breath, gathering all the courage she had. "Yes," she said, her voice firm. "I accept." Nathaniel's face transformed. It wasn't a full smile. He didn't seem like the type of man who smiled easily, but there was relief there and something more, something dangerous. He moved the chair toward her, stopping so close that she could feel the heat from his body. "Then we have a deal," he said, his voice low, husky. And then slowly he raised his hand and touched her face, his fingers tracing the line of her jaw with a delicacy that contrasted with the intensity in his eyes. Lily felt her breath catch. He moved closer, so close that she could feel his warm breath against her lips. For a second, an agonizing second, she thought he was going to kiss her, but he stopped, millimeters away, his eyes locked on hers. "Let's do this right," he whispered. And there was a promise in those words that she didn't fully understand. Then he pulled away, leaving her there, trembling, wanting something she couldn't even name. And Lily realized with a shiver that ran down her entire spine that she had just entered a game far more dangerous than she had imagined. The black dress hung on the closet door like a silent promise or a threat. Lily had been staring at it for 5 minutes, her hands trembling slightly as she held the towel around her body. It was pure silk, with an elegant cut that fell to her knees, thin straps that left her shoulders bare, and a neckline that was discreet but revealing enough to make any man look twice. Nathaniel had sent the dress that afternoon, along with a pair of high heels and a handwritten note. "Wear this tonight, trust me." She didn't have much choice but to trust. After signing the contract 2 days earlier, a formal, cold document full of legal clauses that made everything very clear. She would be his wife for 1 year, live in his mansion, appear at public events by his side, and in return, he would pay for all her mother's medical expenses, plus a generous monthly salary. Everything had happened too fast. Nathaniel had insisted she move immediately to Fairview Estate, his property on the outskirts of the city. The mansion was huge, almost intimidating, with perfectly manicured gardens, a pool that looked like it came from a magazine, and enough rooms to house a small town. He had given her her own room, spacious, luxurious, with a king-size bed covered in Egyptian cotton sheets that felt like clouds against her skin. "You'll have your privacy," he had said, his voice firm. "I won't invade your space. This is just an agreement." But the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching said something else. Now, as she put on the black dress and looked at her reflection in the mirror, Lily barely recognized herself. The fabric hugged her body in a way that made her feel beautiful, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Her brown hair fell in soft waves over her shoulders, and she had applied light makeup, just enough to enhance her green eyes and lips. A soft knock on the door made her turn. "Lily?" Nathaniel's voice came from the other side. "We're late." She took a deep breath, grabbed the small purse he had also sent, and opened the door, and what she saw made her stop breathing. Nathaniel was absolutely impeccable. He wore a custom-made black suit that seemed to have been created specifically for him, a white shirt buttoned up to the neck, and a black tie that matched perfectly. His hair was combed back, revealing his angular face, strong jaw, and grey eyes that now watched her with an intensity that made her legs weak. But what struck her like lightning was the way he looked at her. His eyes traveled over every inch of her body, slowly, as if memorizing every curve, every detail. When he finally met her eyes again, there was something different there, something warm, something dangerous. "You look," he began, and his voice failed. He cleared his throat, trying again. "You look stunning." Lily felt the heat rise up her neck and spread across her cheeks. She wasn't used to receiving compliments. Not like that. Not with that intensity. "Thank you," she murmured, looking away. But Nathaniel didn't look away. He continued to watch her as if he couldn't stop. "Shall we?" he finally said, his voice a little husky. She nodded and followed him to the garage, where a driver was already waiting for them next to a shiny black limousine. The driver opened the door, and Nathaniel got in first. Lily hesitated for a moment before joining him. The interior of the limousine was luxurious. Soft leather, subtle lighting, a bottle of champagne in an ice bucket. Nathaniel sat facing her, his eyes still fixed on her face. The car began to move, gliding smoothly through the city streets. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was thick, charged with a tension that Lily couldn't name. "Nervous?" Nathaniel finally asked, breaking the silence. "A little," she admitted, her hands clasped in her lap. "I've never been to a dinner with investors before." He smiled, a small but genuine smile. "You'll do fine. Just be yourself." "What if they realize this is fake?" she asked, her voice low. Nathaniel leaned forward so close that she could smell his cologne, that woody scent now associated with him in her mind. "Then we'll make it look real," he said, his voice low, almost a whisper. And before she could respond, he reached out and touched her hand. The touch was electric. Lily felt every nerve in her body awaken. He intertwined his fingers with hers, his thumb tracing slow circles on the back of her hand. It was a simple gesture, almost innocent, but the way he looked at her while doing it transformed everything. "We're going to need to touch," he said, his voice still low. "We need to seem comfortable with each other." "Intimate." Lily swallowed hard, her heart beating irregularly. "I understand," she murmured. Nathaniel squeezed her hand lightly, and then slowly brought it to his lips and kissed it. A soft, lingering kiss that sent waves of heat through her entire body. When he pulled away, his eyes were dark, intense. "Does that feel real to you?" he asked, his voice husky. Lily couldn't answer. She just nodded, her breathing faltering. The dinner was at an exclusive restaurant on top of a skyscraper, a place where only the most powerful and influential had access. The room was elegant, lit by crystal chandeliers that cast a golden light over tables covered with impeccable white tablecloths. When Nathaniel and Lily entered, all heads turned. Lily felt the weight of the stares, curious, judgmental, surprised. She knew what they were thinking. Who was this girl next to Nathaniel Carter? Where had she come from? But Nathaniel didn't seem to care. He guided her to the main table with unwavering confidence, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back, a warm touch that made her feel both protected and exposed. When they reached the table, he pulled out the chair for her with a gentleness that surprised her. She sat down, and he positioned himself beside her, so close that their legs almost touched under the table. The investors, 3 middle-aged men, all wearing expensive suits and fake smiles, greeted them with exaggerated enthusiasm. "Nathaniel, what a wonderful surprise," said one of them, a heavy man with a well-groomed mustache. "And who is this beautiful young lady?" Nathaniel looked at Lily, and there was something so genuine in his eyes that she almost believed this was real. "This is Lily," he said, his voice firm. "My fiancée." The words fell like a bomb. The investors exchanged surprised looks, but quickly masked their reaction with polite smiles. "Congratulations," said another, raising his wine glass. "When's the big day?" "Soon," Nathaniel replied, and then, without warning, he took Lily's hand on the table and held it firmly. The touch was natural, easy, as if they had been doing this for years. But Lily felt the electric current run up her arm, spreading through her entire body. During dinner, Nathaniel didn't let go of her hand. He held it while talking to the investors, while eating, while smiling. His fingers traced small circles on her palm, a gesture that seemed unconscious but left her completely distracted. At one point, she tried to reach for her water glass and stumbled slightly on the tablecloth. Nathaniel reacted instantly, his free hand going straight to her waist, holding her firmly. "Careful," he murmured, so close she could feel his warm breath against her ear. Lily felt a shiver run down her entire spine. She turned her face, and suddenly, she was inches from him. His eyes were fixed on her lips, and for a second, just a second, she thought he was going to kiss her right there, in front of everyone. But he controlled himself, releasing her slowly, his hand lingering seconds longer than it should have. The investors talked about business, but Lily barely heard. She was completely consumed by Nathaniel's presence beside her, the heat of his body, the cologne that enveloped her, the way he touched her as if it were the most natural thing in the world. In a moment of silence, he leaned toward her and whispered, so low that only she could hear, "You're doing perfectly." Lily turned her face, and again, she was dangerously close to him. "I'm just following your lead," she whispered back. Nathaniel smiled, a slow, warm smile that did something strange inside her. "Then keep following," he murmured, and his voice had a tone that went beyond a simple agreement. When dinner finally ended, Nathaniel said goodbye to the investors with firm handshakes and polite smiles. Then he and Lily returned to the limousine. As soon as the door closed and the car began to move, the silence between them was deafening. Lily looked out the window, trying to calm her still racing heart. But then she felt Nathaniel's hand touching hers again. She turned her face, and he was watching her with an intensity that made her legs tremble. "You were incredible tonight," he said, his voice husky. "Thank you," she murmured, feeling the heat rise up her neck. Nathaniel held her hand more firmly, intertwining their fingers. "Lily," he said, and there was something different in his voice now, something vulnerable. "I know this is just an agreement. I know none of this is real. But," he paused, his eyes searching hers, "but when I'm with you, it feels real. And I don't know anymore if I'm just pretending." His words hit her like lightning. Lily felt the air leave her lungs, her heart race. She didn't know what to say, didn't know how to respond. So instead of speaking, she just squeezed his hand back. And in that moment, as the car glided through the dark city streets, Lily realized she didn't know anymore where the act ended and where the truth began. The following weeks were an emotional roller coaster that Lily never imagined experiencing. She woke up every morning in the huge bed in the room Nathaniel had given her, wrapped in soft sheets that smelled of fresh lavender, and for a few seconds, she forgot where she was. Then reality came back. She was living in a mansion, pretending to be a billionaire's fiancée, and her life had been turned upside down. But the strangest thing of all was that it no longer felt like pretending. Nathaniel was different from what she expected. In the first few days, she imagined he would be cold, distant, treating this like a simple business transaction. But he wasn't like that. He was thoughtful. He asked how she had slept every morning. He made sure she had everything she needed. And always, he looked at her as if she were the only person in the room. They had breakfast together on the terrace overlooking the gardens, with the rising sun painting the sky in golden and pink tones. Nathaniel read the newspapers while drinking black coffee, but from time to time he looked up and caught her watching him. And when that happened, he smiled. That small, almost shy smile that made her heart race. One morning, as she nibbled on a piece of toast, he asked, "How's your mother?" Lily looked up, surprised. She didn't expect him to remember, didn't expect him to care. "She's better," Lily replied, feeling emotion tighten her throat. "The doctors said the new treatment is working. She has more energy now. Yesterday, when I visited her, she was smiling." Nathaniel put down the newspaper and leaned forward, his eyes fixed on her. "I'm glad to hear that," he said, and there was absolute sincerity in his voice. Lily felt tears burn in her eyes, but she blinked quickly, trying to hold them back. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything. I never could have done this without you." Nathaniel reached across the table and held her hand. The touch was warm, firm, comforting. "You don't need to thank me, Lily. I wanted to do this." The way he said it, with so much conviction, did something strange inside her. She looked at their intertwined hands and realized she didn't want him to let go. But he did let go, returning to the newspaper, and Lily felt a strange sense of loss. The nights were even more complicated. After public events, and there were many, dinners, galas, board meetings, they would return home and for a while stay together in the living room. Nathaniel would light the fireplace, even if it wasn't cold, because he said the sound of the crackling fire was relaxing. They talked about everything and nothing, about books they had read, movies they liked, places they dreamed of visiting. Lily discovered that Nathaniel had a sarcastic, sharp sense of humor that caught her by surprise. He made her laugh, something she hadn't done in a long time. And when she laughed, he watched her with an expression she couldn't decipher, but that made her feel seen in a way she never had been before. One night, after a particularly exhausting event, they were sitting on the couch, the firelight dancing on the walls. Lily had taken off her high heels and had her feet tucked under her body, a glass of wine in her hands. Nathaniel was beside her, closer than usual. He had taken off his jacket and loosened his tie, and Lily couldn't stop looking at the way the white shirt fit his broad shoulders. "Can I ask you a question?" she asked suddenly, the courage coming from the wine. Nathaniel turned his face toward her, his eyes gleaming in the firelight. "Of course." Lily hesitated, biting her lower lip. "What happened? The accident, I mean. You don't have to tell me if you don't want to, but I'd like to know." Nathaniel was silent for a long moment, his eyes fixed on the fire. Lily thought he wasn't going to answer, that she had crossed a line, but then he began to speak. "It was 3 years ago," he said, his voice low, almost distant. "I was coming back from a meeting in New York. My driver was tired, but I insisted we continue. It was snowing, the road was slippery, and then..." He paused, his jaw clenched. "We lost control. The car flipped. My driver died instantly. I survived, but my spinal cord was damaged. The doctors said I would never walk again." Lily felt her heart tighten. She set her wine glass on the table and without thinking held his hand. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. Nathaniel looked at her hand on his, and then slowly intertwined his fingers with hers. "At first I wanted to give up," he admitted, his voice breaking. "Everyone around me looked at me with pity, as if I were no longer a man, as if I were less." He turned his face toward her, and there was a raw vulnerability in his eyes that hit her like a punch to the chest. "But then you showed up, and you didn't look at me that way. You looked at me as if I was still whole." Lily felt tears run down her face before she could stop them. She squeezed his hand harder. "That's because you are whole, Nathaniel," she said, her voice firm despite the tears. "You're more of a man than anyone I've ever met. Strong, intelligent, kind. The wheelchair doesn't define you, it's just a part of you. But it's not everything you are." Nathaniel looked at her for a long moment, his eyes shining with contained emotion. Then slowly, he lifted her hand and brought it to his lips, kissing it with a reverence that made her heart race. "You don't know how much I needed to hear that," he whispered against her skin. They stayed like that for a moment, hands intertwined, eyes fixed on each other, the fire crackling in the background. And then Nathaniel released her hand and raised his own, touching her face with a delicacy that made her shiver. He brushed a strand of hair from her face, his fingers lingering on her skin, tracing the line of her jaw, the contour of her lips. It was a slow, intentional touch, as if he were memorizing every inch of her. "Lily," he murmured, his voice husky. "Yes?" she whispered, barely able to breathe. He moved closer, so close that she could feel his warm breath against her lips. "I shouldn't want this," he said, his eyes fixed on hers. "I shouldn't want you, but I do." Lily felt her heart stop and then race. "Nathaniel, "No," he interrupted her, his thumb tracing her lower lip. "Let me talk. I know this is an agreement. I know you're here because of the money, because of your mother. I know none of this is real. But when I'm with you, when I touch you, when I look at you—" He paused, his eyes darkening. "It feels real, and I can't pretend anymore that I don't feel anything." Lily was trembling. Each of his words hit her like a wave, dragging her to a place she didn't know if she could return from. She began, but the words failed. Nathaniel rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed, his breathing heavy. "You don't need to say anything," he whispered. "Just let me stay here, just for a moment." And Lily let him. She closed her eyes and felt his presence, the warmth, the scent, the strength, enveloping her completely. They stayed like that for minutes that seemed like hours, their foreheads pressed together, their breaths intertwined, their hearts beating in the same rhythm. And when they finally pulled away, there was something different in the air, something that couldn't be undone. Nathaniel held her face with both hands, his thumbs caressing her cheeks. "Good night, Lily," he said, his voice low, loaded with something she couldn't name. "Good night, Nathaniel," she replied, her voice trembling. He released her slowly, as if fighting the urge not to let her go. Then he turned the chair and left the room, leaving her alone with the crackling fire and her racing heart. Lily sat there for a long time, her fingers touching the place where he had touched, the warmth still pulsing on her skin, and she realized with a shiver that ran down her entire spine that she was beginning to fall in love with him. And that was very, very dangerous, because she knew that when the contract ended, she would have to leave him, and she didn't know if her heart would survive. The charity gala was the most important event of the year in Nathaniel's social circle. Lily knew this because he had mentioned it several times during the week, always with a tension in his voice she wasn't used to hearing. The event would bring together the city's most powerful businessmen, members of the Carter and Cole Industries Board, and the press would be there in full force. It was the perfect opportunity to show that Nathaniel Carter was stable, committed, and completely in control of both his personal and professional life. "We need to impress them," Nathaniel had said the night before as they reviewed the details. "There can be no doubts about us." Lily had agreed, but now as she got ready in her room, the weight of that responsibility crushed her. She looked at the dress Nathaniel had chosen, a long, deep midnight blue design with an elegant cut that hugged every curve of her body and left her back completely bare. It was daring, sophisticated, and made her look like someone who belonged in that world. But inside, she still felt like the girl who cleaned floors. When she descended the main staircase, Nathaniel was already waiting for her in the entrance hall. And when he saw her, the world around them seemed to stop. He was wearing an impeccable tuxedo, all in black, with a bow tie that highlighted his strong neck and defined jaw. His hair was combed back and his eyes, those intense grey eyes, shone with something that made her stomach flip. Lily descended slowly, holding the hem of her dress with one hand, her heart beating so hard she was certain he could hear it. When she reached the last step, Nathaniel moved closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "You look," he began, and his voice failed. He shook his head as if words weren't enough. "You look absolutely stunning, Lily." She felt heat rise up her neck and spread across her face. "Thank you," she murmured, looking away. But Nathaniel held her hand, making her look back at him. "No," he said, his voice firm. "Don't look away. You need to know how beautiful you are. You need to believe it." Lily felt tears burn in her eyes, but she blinked quickly. "Okay," she whispered. Nathaniel smiled, a slow, warm smile that melted something inside her. Then he lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it, lingering there for a few seconds before releasing it. "Let's go," he said, his voice husky. The ballroom where the gala was held looked like something out of a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers hung from the high ceiling, casting golden light over tables covered with white tablecloths and centerpieces full of white roses and candles. An orchestra played live on stage, and the guests, all dressed in their finest, chatted in small groups, champagne flutes in their hands. When Nathaniel and Lily entered, the buzz died down. All heads turned. Lily felt the weight of the stares, curious, judgmental, envious. She knew what they were thinking. She knew what they were whispering. But Nathaniel didn't seem to care. He guided her through the room with unwavering confidence, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back, a warm touch that kept her anchored. They greeted dozens of people, executives, investors, board members. Nathaniel introduced Lily as his fiancée to each of them, and the way he said it, with pride, with conviction, made her heart ache. At one point, one of the older board members, a tall man with grey hair and a penetrating gaze, approached. "Nathaniel," he said, extending his hand. "Good to see you." "Mr. Whitmore," Nathaniel replied, shaking his hand firmly. The man turned his eyes to Lily, studying her with an attention that made her uncomfortable. "And this must be the famous fiancé," he said, his tone neutral but with a hint of doubt. Nathaniel moved closer to Lily, his arm wrapping around her waist protectively. "Yes, this is Lily," he said, his voice firm. "The woman I'm going to marry." The man raised an eyebrow but said nothing. He just nodded and walked away, leaving Lily with a strange feeling in her stomach. "He doesn't believe us," she whispered to Nathaniel when they were alone. Nathaniel looked at her, his eyes darkening. "Then let's make him believe." Before she could ask what he meant, the music changed. The orchestra began playing a slow, romantic waltz, and several couples headed to the center of the ballroom to dance. Nathaniel looked at the dance floor and then at Lily. "Dance with me," he said. It wasn't a request. It was a need. Lily felt her heart race. "Nathaniel, I don't know if—" "Trust me," he interrupted, extending his hand. And she trusted. Lily held his hand, and he guided her to the center of the ballroom. All eyes were on them now. She could feel the weight of the attention, the judgment, the curiosity. Nathaniel stopped in the middle of the dance floor and pulled Lily closer. She hesitated for a moment, not knowing where to put her hands, but then he held her waist firmly, pulling her until their bodies were almost touching. "Put your hands on my shoulders," he murmured, his voice low and husky. Lily obeyed, her hands trembling slightly as they rested on his broad shoulders. She could feel the heat from his body through the fabric of the tuxedo, the firm muscles under her palms. And then they began to move. Nathaniel led her with surprising confidence, the wheelchair gliding smoothly across the polished floor. He guided her in slow circles, his hands holding her waist with a firmness that was both gentle and possessive. Lily couldn't look away from him. She was completely lost in that grey gaze, in the way he watched her as if she were the only person in the ballroom. "You're doing great," he whispered, so low that only she could hear. Lily smiled, feeling something warm expand in her chest. "I'm just following you." Nathaniel smiled back, a genuine smile, full of warmth. "Then keep following." The music continued, slow and enveloping, and they kept dancing. Lily felt the world around them disappear. There were no more guests, no more judgments, no more contract. There were just the two of them. In a moment of pure boldness and perhaps driven by the music, perhaps by the way he looked at her, Lily slid into his lap. Nathaniel gasped softly, surprised, but his hands immediately adjusted, holding her firmly. One hand stayed on her waist, the other moved up to her bare back, his fingers tracing the exposed skin slowly and deliberately. Lily felt a shiver run down her entire spine. They were so close now that she could feel his breath against her neck, the heat from his body enveloping her completely. His eyes were dark, intense, fixed on hers. "Lily," he murmured, his voice so husky it sounded like a growl. "Yes?" she whispered, barely able to breathe. Nathaniel raised his hand and touched her face, his fingers tracing the line of her jaw, moving down to her neck. "You see me as a man," he said, his eyes burning into hers, "and that makes me want everything with you." Lily felt the air leave her lungs. Her heart was beating so hard she was certain he could feel it against his own chest. And then, before she could think, before she could stop herself, she closed the distance between them and kissed him. The kiss was explosive. It wasn't soft or hesitant. It was full of desire, of need, of everything they had been suppressing since the first moment they saw each other. Nathaniel groaned softly against her lips, his hands tightening on her waist, pulling her even closer. His mouth moved against hers with an urgency that made her dizzy, his tongue tracing her lower lip before deepening the kiss. Lily surrendered completely, her hands moving up to his hair. her fingers tangling in the dark strands as she kissed him with everything she felt, all the confusion, all the desire, all the fear. When they finally pulled away, they were breathless, their foreheads pressed together, their breaths intertwined. Nathaniel held her face with both hands, his eyes still closed. "That wasn't pretending," he whispered, his voice broken. Lily shook her head, tears running down her face. "No," she agreed, her voice trembling. "It wasn't." He opened his eyes, and what she saw there left her breathless. There was desire, yes, but there was more. There was something deep, something real, something that went far beyond any contract. "Let's go home," he said, his voice firm. And Lily nodded, knowing nothing would ever be the same, because the rules had just been broken. And there was no going back. The ride back to Fairview Estate was wrapped in a thick silence, charged with a tension that made the air inside the limousine feel suffocating. Lily sat beside Nathaniel, so close that their thighs touched. She could feel the heat radiating from his body, could hear his controlled breathing, could feel the tension in his muscles, even without touching him directly. Her hands were clasped in her lap, her fingers pressed against each other in an attempt to control the trembling that ran through her entire body. The kiss, that damned kiss in the middle of the ballroom in front of everyone, had changed everything. She could still taste him on her lips, something warm, intense, addictive. She could still feel his hands holding her waist with that mix of strength and tenderness that left her completely defenseless. She could still hear the low groan he had let out against her mouth, a sound that had sent waves of heat through her entire body. Lily closed her eyes, trying to organize her thoughts, but all she could see was his face. His eyes darkened with desire, his lips parted, the way he looked at her, as if she were the only thing that mattered in the world. Lily. His voice pulled her from her thoughts. She opened her eyes and turned her face, finding Nathaniel watching her with an intensity that made her stomach flip. "Yes," she whispered, her voice coming out weaker than she intended. Nathaniel didn't respond immediately. Instead, he reached out and touched her face, his fingers tracing the line of her jaw with a delicacy that contrasted with the visible tension throughout his body. "We need to talk," he finally said, his voice husky. Lily nodded, unable to speak. The car stopped in front of the mansion a few minutes later. The driver opened the door, but Nathaniel dismissed him with a brief wave of his hand. "You can go. We won't need anything else tonight." The man nodded and walked away, disappearing toward the staff quarters. Nathaniel and Lily were alone. He entered the mansion first, and she followed, her heart beating so hard she was certain he could hear it. They crossed the entrance hall, passed through the living room, and Nathaniel stopped halfway, turning his chair to face her. The soft light from the chandeliers cast shadows on his face, highlighting the strong line of his jaw, the curve of his lips, the intensity in his eyes. "Lily," he began, and then stopped, as if struggling to find the right words. She waited, her heart in her throat. Nathaniel ran his hand through his hair, messing up the perfectly combed strands. It was a gesture of frustration, of vulnerability, and it made something inside her contract. "I can't pretend anymore," he finally said, his voice low but firm. "I can't keep looking at you and pretending this is just an agreement. I can't keep touching you and pretending I don't feel anything." He moved closer to her, so close that Lily had to lift her face to keep looking into his eyes. "When I kissed you tonight," he continued, his voice becoming even huskier, "it wasn't for the performance, it wasn't for the investors or the board. It was because I wanted to, because I need you in a way I shouldn't, in a way that goes far beyond any contract we signed." Lily felt tears burn in her eyes. Her breathing was irregular, her heart beating so fast it hurt. "Nathaniel—" "No," he interrupted, raising his hand. "Let me finish. I know this wasn't in the agreement. I know you're here because of your mother, because of the money, and I won't pressure you, I won't force you into anything. But I need you to know." He paused, his eyes searching hers with desperate intensity. "I need you to know that for me, it's not pretending anymore. For me, you're not just my fake fiancé. You're everything." His words hit her like lightning. Lily felt tears run down her face, but this time she didn't try to hide them. "Nathaniel," she whispered, her voice breaking, "do you think I'm pretending? Do you think I could fake the way I look at you? The way my heart races every time you walk into the room? The way I think about you all the time, even when I shouldn't?" She took a step toward him, her hands trembling. "I'm not pretending either, not anymore." Nathaniel was completely still, his eyes fixed on her, his breathing heavy. And then, without warning, he pulled her to him. His hands wrapped around her waist, bringing her into his lap with surprising strength. Lily gasped, her hands automatically going to his shoulders to balance herself. They stayed like that for a moment, their faces inches apart, their breaths intertwined, their eyes fixed on each other. "Lily," Nathaniel murmured, his voice so low it was almost a growl. "If you don't want this, tell me now, because if I kiss you again, I won't be able to stop." Lily felt her entire body tremble. She looked into his eyes, those grey eyes that saw her in a way no one ever had, and made her decision. "Then don't stop," she whispered. And Nathaniel didn't stop. He kissed her with an intensity that took all the air from her lungs. His mouth moved against hers with urgency, with hunger, with a need that seemed to have been suppressed for a long time. His hands moved up her bare back, his fingers tracing the exposed skin, sending shivers down her entire spine. Lily moaned softly against his lips, her hands moving up to his hair, her fingers tangling in the dark strands as she pulled him closer, deepening the kiss. Nathaniel groaned back, the sound vibrating against her mouth in a way that left her completely dizzy. One of his hands moved down to her thigh, squeezing with a possessive firmness that made heat explode in her belly. When they finally pulled away to breathe, they were breathless, their faces flushed, their eyes darkened with desire. "Come with me," Nathaniel said, his voice husky, commanding. Lily nodded, unable to speak. He led her through the mansion's corridors, and when they reached his room, a huge, elegant space with a king-size bed covered in dark sheets and an entire wall of windows overlooking the illuminated gardens. He stopped the chair beside the bed. Lily got out of his lap, her legs trembling, and stood in front of him. Nathaniel looked at her from bottom to top, his eyes traveling over every inch of her body with visible hunger. "You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," he murmured, extending his hand. Lily held his hand, and he pulled her back to him, making her sit on his lap again. But this time she was facing him, her legs on either side of him, their bodies pressed against each other. Nathaniel held her face with both hands, his thumbs caressing her cheeks. "Are you sure?" he asked, his eyes searching hers. "Because if you say no now, I'll stop. No matter how much I want this, I'll stop." Lily felt her heart squeeze with his concern, with the respect, with the care. "I'm sure," she whispered, pressing her forehead against his. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." Nathaniel closed his eyes, a sigh of relief escaping his lips. "Thank God," he murmured. And then he kissed her again, slowly this time, savoring every moment, every touch, every sigh. His hands explored her body with a reverence that made her feel precious, loved, desired. Lily surrendered completely, her hands running over his chest, feeling the firm muscles under his shirt. She began to unbutton the tuxedo, her fingers trembling slightly, and Nathaniel helped her, removing the jacket and tossing it aside. When they were finally skin against skin, Nathaniel held her face again, his eyes fixed on hers. "Lily," he whispered, his voice loaded with emotion. "For me, it's not pretending anymore." She smiled, tears running down her face. "Not for me either," she whispered back. And that night, between kisses and touches, between sighs and silent promises, they left behind any pretense of pretending. Because what existed between them now was real, and nothing, absolutely nothing, could change that. When the moon was high in the sky and the gardens outside glowed under the silver light, Lily lay in Nathaniel's arms, her head resting on his chest, listening to the steady beats of his heart. Nathaniel traced slow circles on her back with his fingers, the touch gentle, almost hypnotic. "I never want this to feel like a lie again," he murmured against her hair. Lily smiled, pressing a kiss to his chest. "Then it never will be," she promised. And in that moment, with their bodies intertwined and their hearts beating in the same rhythm, they knew they had crossed a line from which there was no return. And neither of them wanted to go back. Moonlight streamed through the enormous windows of Nathaniel's room, bathing everything in silver and blue tones. The silence was deep, broken only by their intertwined breaths and the distant sound of wind in the gardens outside. Lily lay beside Nathaniel on the huge bed, her body still trembling slightly with the intensity of what they had shared. She felt every inch of his skin against hers, the heat radiating between them like a flame that refused to go out. Nathaniel was on his side, propped up on one elbow, watching her with those grey eyes that now shone with a mixture of tenderness and desire that made her heart race. He raised his hand and touched her face with a delicacy that contrasted with the passion they had just shared. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice husky, loaded with genuine concern. Lily nodded, unable to find words that described what she was feeling. It was too much. It was overwhelming. It was perfect. "I'm more than okay," she finally managed to whisper, turning her face to kiss the palm of his hand. Nathaniel smiled, a small but genuine smile that lit up his entire face. He moved closer, pressing a soft kiss on her forehead, then on the tip of her nose, then on her lips. A slow, affectionate kiss that was in no hurry to end. When he pulled away, he brushed a strand of hair from her face, tucking it behind her ear with almost reverent care. "You're beautiful," he murmured, his eyes traveling over every detail of her face as if memorizing it. Lily felt heat rise up her neck. She had never felt beautiful before, not the way he made her feel. Not with that intensity, that conviction. "Nathaniel," she began, but he silenced her with another kiss, this one a bit deeper, a bit more urgent. His hands began to explore again, moving down her neck, over her shoulders, tracing the contour of her arms. Each touch was deliberate, intentional, as if he wanted to know every inch of her. Lily moaned softly against his lips, her own hands moving up his chest, feeling the firm muscles under her palms. She loved the sensation, his strength, his solidity, the heat emanating from his skin. Nathaniel kissed the corner of her mouth, then moved down along her jawline, down her neck, lingering there, his tongue tracing small circles on the sensitive skin that made Lily arch her body against him. "You have no idea what you do to me," he murmured against her skin, his voice so low it was almost a growl. Lily held her breath as his hands moved lower, exploring, caressing, discovering every curve, every place that made her tremble. He was careful, attentive, observing every reaction, every sigh, as if learning what made her come undone. "Nathaniel," she gasped, her hands clutching his shoulders. He lifted his face, his eyes meeting hers, and what she saw there left her breathless. There was desire, yes, an intense, almost wild desire. But there was also something deeper. There was adoration. There was respect. There was love. "Say my name again," he asked, his voice husky. "Nathaniel," she whispered, and he closed his eyes as if that sound were the sweetest thing he had ever heard. He kissed her again, this time with more urgency, more need. His hands were everywhere, in her hair, on her face, moving down her back, gripping her waist. Lily surrendered completely, letting herself be carried away by the sensation, by the intensity, by the way he made her feel desired, precious, loved. Nathaniel unbuttoned the back of her dress with firm but careful hands, the blue fabric sliding down her shoulders and falling around her waist. He pulled back for a moment, just to look at her, and the intensity in his gaze made Lily blush from head to toe. "Perfect," he murmured, almost to himself. "You're absolutely perfect." Lily felt tears burn in her eyes, but this time they were tears of happiness, of relief, of gratitude for having found someone who saw her this way. She pulled at his shirt, and he helped her, removing it completely. Lily let her hands explore his chest, his broad shoulders, his muscular arms. He was strong, so strong, and she loved every inch of him. Nathaniel pulled her closer, their bodies fitting perfectly, skin against skin, heat against heat. He kissed her shoulders, moved down her neck, nibbling lightly, drawing out low moans that she couldn't contain. "You drive me crazy," he confessed against her skin, his hands moving down her waist, over her thighs, moving back up in a slow and torturous path. "From the first moment I saw you, I can't think about anything else." Lily arched her body against him, her hands moving up to his hair, her fingers tangling in the dark strands. "Nathaniel, please," she gasped, not knowing exactly what she was asking for, but knowing she needed him, all of him. He understood. He always understood. Nathaniel held her face with both hands, forcing her to look into his eyes. "I want all of you," he said, his voice firm, loaded with emotion. "Not just for today, not just for tonight. I want you forever." Lily felt her heart explode in her chest. Tears flowed freely now, but she smiled, a huge, radiant smile, full of everything she felt. "Then have me," she whispered. "All of me, forever." And Nathaniel kissed her as if it were the last time, as if he wanted to engrave that moment in his memory forever. What followed was a mixture of passion and tenderness, of urgency and delicacy. Nathaniel touched her as if she were the most precious thing in the world, but also with a hunger that made it clear how much he desired her. And Lily surrendered completely, letting him take her to places she had never known, to sensations that left her dizzy, breathless, completely lost in him. They moved together in perfect synchrony, their bodies fitting as if they had been made for each other. Each touch, each kiss, each sigh was loaded with meaning, with promise, with love. When they finally reached the peak together, it was as if the entire world stopped. Lily cried out his name, her nails digging into his shoulders, and Nathaniel held her so tightly that she was certain he would never let her go. And then, slowly, they came back to earth, their bodies still intertwined, their breathing heavy, their hearts beating in the same frantic rhythm. Nathaniel pulled her to him, wrapping her completely in his arms, his face buried in her hair. "Never again," he murmured, his voice broken with emotion. "I'm never letting you go again." Lily nestled against him, feeling safe, loved, complete. "Me neither," she whispered back. They stayed like that for a long time, simply holding each other, letting the silence and closeness say what words couldn't. After a while, Nathaniel began tracing slow circles on her back with his fingers, the touch gentle, comforting. "Lily," he said softly. "Hmm?" she murmured, drowsy, her body completely relaxed against his. "Thank you," he said, and there was so much sincerity in his voice that she had to lift her head to look at him. "For what?" she asked, confused. Nathaniel held her face, his thumbs caressing her cheeks. "For seeing me, for not looking at the wheelchair and judging me incomplete, for making me feel like a man, whole, desired." Lily felt tears return. "Nathaniel, you've always been whole, always been a man. That never changed. And she paused, gathering courage to say what needed to be said. "I love you." Nathaniel was completely still. His eyes widened, and for a moment, he just looked at her, as if he couldn't believe what he had heard. And then, he kissed her. A deep, desperate kiss, full of everything he felt, but couldn't put into words. When he pulled away, there were tears in his eyes too. "I love you," he said, his voice husky. "More than I thought it was possible to love anyone." Lily smiled through the tears, and they kissed again, slowly this time, savoring, celebrating. When they finally separated, Nathaniel pulled her back into his arms, intertwining his legs with hers, holding her as if she were the most precious thing in the world. "Sleep," he murmured against her hair. "You're safe. I'm here." And Lily closed her eyes, letting herself be enveloped by the feeling of being in his arms, by the sound of his heartbeat, by the absolute certainty that she had found the place where she belonged. Before falling asleep, she heard his voice, low and loaded with emotion. "I never want this to feel like a lie again." And she smiled, whispering back before sleep took her. "It never will be." The next morning arrived wrapped in golden light streaming through the enormous windows, painting the room in warm, soft tones. Lily woke slowly, her body relaxed, her mind still wrapped in the pleasant fog of someone who had slept deeply for the first time in a long while. It took a few seconds to realize where she was, and then it all came back. Nathaniel. The night before. The confessions. The love. She opened her eyes and turned her head, finding Nathaniel awake beside her, propped up on one elbow, watching her with those grey eyes that now shone with a tenderness that made her heart melt. "Good morning," he said, his voice husky with sleep but loaded with warmth. Lily smiled, feeling heat rise up her neck. "Good morning," she whispered back. Nathaniel reached out and brushed a strand of hair from her face, his fingers lingering on her skin, tracing the line of her jaw with a delicacy that made her shiver. "Did you sleep well?" he asked. "Better than ever," she admitted, feeling completely vulnerable under that gaze. Nathaniel smiled, a genuine smile full of happiness. "Me too." They stayed like that for a long moment, just looking at each other, letting the comfortable silence envelop them. There was no rush, no need for words. Just each other's presence was enough. But then Nathaniel took a deep breath, and Lily noticed there was something in his expression, a determination, a seriousness, that made her sit up in bed, pulling the sheet to cover her body. "What is it?" she asked, her heart beginning to beat faster. Nathaniel sat up too, adjusting himself in the chair beside the bed. He held her hands, intertwining his fingers firmly. "Lily, I need to tell you something," he began, his eyes fixed on hers. "And I need you to know I'm being completely sincere." Lily felt her stomach flip. She nodded, waiting. Nathaniel took another deep breath, as if gathering courage. "When I made that agreement with you, when I asked you to be my fake wife, it was all about business. It was about keeping control of the company, about proving to the board that I was capable. It was cold, calculated, selfish." He paused, squeezing her hands. "But something changed. You changed everything. And now? Now I can't think of this as an agreement anymore. I can't look at you and see a transaction. I see the woman I love, the woman I want by my side, not for 1 year, but forever." Lily felt tears burn in her eyes, but she didn't hold them back. Nathaniel released one of her hands and picked up something from the nightstand. When he turned back, he was holding the contract, that cold, formal document they had signed weeks ago. "I want to tear this up," he said, his voice firm. "I want to end this agreement. I don't want conditions anymore. I don't want clauses anymore. I don't want anything that makes this less real than it is." He held out the contract to her. "But I'll only do it if you want to as well. If you still want to stay with me, not out of obligation, not for money, but because you love me, because you want this as much as I do." Lily looked at the contract, then at Nathaniel, and felt her heart explode in her chest. "Nathaniel," she said, her voice trembling but firm, "I never wanted this out of obligation. Yes, at first it was for the money, it was for my mother, but at some point, it stopped being about that. It stopped being about anything other than you." She held his face with both hands, forcing him to look right into her eyes. "I love you, not because of what you can give me, not because of what you did for my mother. I love you because you're kind, strong, vulnerable, and real. Because you see me in a way no one ever has. Because when I'm with you, I feel complete." Tears flowed freely now, but she didn't care. "So yes, tear up that damn contract, because I don't need it. I only need you." Nathaniel closed his eyes, a sigh of relief escaping his lips. When he opened them again, there were tears there too. Without saying a word, he tore the contract in half, and then tore it again, and again, until there was nothing left but small pieces of paper that he let fall to the floor. "There," he said, his voice husky. "It's done. There's no more agreement, no more conditions. It's just us. Real. True." Lily launched forward, throwing her arms around his neck, kissing him with all the intensity she felt. Nathaniel held her tightly, his hands moving up her back, pulling her into his lap. The kiss was deep, desperate, full of promises and emotions that couldn't fit into words. When they finally separated, they were breathless, their foreheads pressed together, their hearts beating in the same rhythm. "I love you," Nathaniel whispered against her lips. "I love you," Lily whispered back. They stayed like that for a long moment, just holding each other, letting the reality of what they had just done settle in. Then Nathaniel pulled back slightly, his eyes shining with something that looked like anticipation. "I have something else to show you," he said. Lily frowned, curious. "What?" Nathaniel picked up his phone from the nightstand and opened something, then turned the screen toward her. It was an email from the Carter & Cole Industries Health Plan Administrator, and the subject line read, "Dependent, inclusion approved, Margaret Evans." Lily read the email quickly, her hands trembling. Nathaniel had officially included her mother in the company health plan, not as part of a temporary agreement, but as a permanent dependent. All treatments, all appointments, all medications, everything would be covered. No limits, no conditions. "Nathaniel," she began, but her voice failed. "I don't want you to worry about this ever again," he said, his voice firm. "Your mother will have the best possible treatment, always, no matter what happens between us. This isn't part of any agreement anymore. It's a gift, because you deserve peace. You deserve to be able to breathe without the weight of that worry." Lily couldn't hold back the tears. They flowed freely, and she threw herself into his arms, sobbing against his chest. "Thank you," she cried. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." Nathaniel held her tightly, one hand stroking her hair, the other holding her waist. "You don't need to thank me," he murmured. "I would do anything for you, anything." They stayed like that for a long time, Lily crying with relief and gratitude, Nathaniel holding her as if he would never let go. When the tears finally stopped, Lily pulled back slightly, wiping her face with her hands. "Sorry," she said, smiling through the tears. "I'm a mess." Nathaniel held her face, his thumbs wiping away the remaining tears. "You're perfect," he said, and the sincerity in his voice made her believe it. Lily smiled, a huge, radiant smile, and kissed him again, slowly this time, savoring. When she pulled away, she rested her forehead against his. "So, what happens now?" she asked. Nathaniel smiled. "Now we live. For real. No rules, no pretending. Just love." Lily felt her heart expand in her chest. "Just love," she repeated, and the phrase sounded like the most right thing in the world. They spent the rest of the morning together, talking, laughing, kissing, planning the future. Nathaniel talked about places he wanted to take her, experiences he wanted to share, dreams he had for the two of them. Lily talked about her mother, about how anxious she was to introduce them officially, about how she wanted Margaret to see how happy he made her. And at some point, while they were lying together in bed, intertwined, Nathaniel said something that made Lily's heart stop. "Marry me." Lily lifted her head, her eyes wide. "What?" Nathaniel smiled, a nervous, vulnerable smile. "Marry me. For real. Not because of an agreement, not to convince the board, but because I love you and want to spend the rest of my life with you." Lily felt tears return, but this time they were tears of pure happiness. "Yes," she said, her voice firm and clear. "Yes, I'll marry you." Nathaniel pulled her into a deep, desperate kiss, full of everything he felt. And when they separated, he held her face with both hands, his eyes shining. "I'm going to make you the happiest woman in the world," he promised. "You already do," she whispered back. And in that moment, with the sun bathing the room in golden light and their hearts beating in perfect synchrony, they knew they had found something rare, something precious. They had found true love. And nothing, absolutely nothing, could destroy it. 2 weeks had passed since that transformative morning, and Lily felt like she was living in a dream she didn't want to wake up from. Everything had changed. The weight she had carried on her shoulders for so long, the constant worry about her mother, the financial insecurity, the feeling of always fighting just to survive, had disappeared. In its place, there was lightness, there was joy, there was love. Nathaniel was everything she never knew she needed. He surprised her every day with small gestures, fresh flowers in her room every morning, handwritten notes left on her pillow, dinners personally prepared by him, or rather supervised by him, while the chef executed his instructions. He made her laugh, made her feel safe, made her feel loved in a way she had never experienced, and she loved him more each day. That Saturday afternoon, Nathaniel had been mysterious all day. He said he had a surprise for her, but refused to give any hints, only asking that she wear something comfortable and pretty. Lily chose a light summer dress in a soft lavender tone that flowed around her legs when she moved. She left her hair loose in natural waves and applied only light makeup. When she came down the stairs, she found Nathaniel waiting for her in the hall. He was wearing a white linen shirt, the sleeves rolled up to his elbows, and dark pants. His hair was slightly messy, as if he had run his hands through it several times, a sign of nervousness she had learned to recognize. When he saw her, His eyes lit up. "You look beautiful," he said, extending his hand. Lily held his hand, intertwining their fingers. "You're nervous," she observed, frowning. "Why?" Nathaniel smiled, a small, almost shy smile. "You'll see soon." He guided her through the house, not toward the garage as she expected, but toward the back of the property where the garden stretched out in a green sea dotted with colorful flowers. But when they got closer, Lily realized something was different. The garden had been transformed. Hundreds, maybe thousands, of small golden lights were hung in the trees, creating a glowing canopy that looked like something out of a fairy tale. White rose petals covered the stone path leading to the center of the garden, where there was a small gazebo decorated with more flowers, roses, lilies, peonies, all in shades of white and soft pink. Lily stopped in her tracks, her hand flying to cover her mouth, her eyes wide with surprise. "Nathaniel," she whispered, unable to complete the sentence. He held her hand more firmly, gently pulling her forward. "Come," he said, his voice low. Lily followed him in silence, her heart beating so hard she could hear it in her own ears. When they reached the gazebo, she noticed there were candles lit everywhere, creating a soft, romantic light that danced on the white walls. And in the center of the gazebo, on a small table covered with a lace cloth, there was a single red rose in a crystal vase. Nathaniel stopped and turned his chair to face her. His eyes were shining, not just with the candlelight, but with emotion. "Lily," he began, his voice trembling, "from the moment you walked into my office that night, my life changed. You came in as a lie, as part of a cold, calculated agreement, but you became my truth. You became my reason to wake up every morning. You became everything." Lily felt tears begin to run down her face, but she didn't wipe them away. She just stood there, listening, her heart about to explode. Nathaniel took a deep breath, and then, with a movement that clearly required effort, he moved from the chair, not to stand, but to support himself the way he could, with his knees touching the ground, his hands holding the gazebo support to balance himself. Lily gasped, her hands flying to her face. "Nathaniel, you don't need to—" "Yes, I do," he interrupted, his voice firm despite the visible effort. "I need to do this the right way, because you deserve it. You deserve everything." He released one hand from the support and took a small velvet box from his pocket. When he opened it, Lily saw the most beautiful ring she had ever seen in her life. A solitaire diamond on a delicate white gold band, simple but absolutely stunning. Nathaniel held the box with trembling hands, his eyes fixed on hers. "Lily Evans," he said, his voice breaking with emotion. "You made me believe in love when I thought I would never be able to feel that again. You made me feel whole when the entire world told me I was broken. You gave me hope, joy, and a reason to live beyond business and money." He paused, tears now running down his face too. "I love you more than words can express. And I want to spend the rest of my life proving that to you. Every day, in every way possible." He took a deep breath, his eyes shining. "Will you be my wife? For real? Not because of an agreement, not to convince anyone, but because you love me and I love you and nothing else matters beyond that?" Lily was crying openly now, tears flowing uncontrollably, her heart beating so hard it hurt. "Yes," she said, her voice coming out in a broken whisper. "Yes, yes, yes." Nathaniel smiled, a huge, radiant smile, full of relief and happiness. With trembling hands, he took the ring from the box and held her left hand. "You're shaking," Lily said through tears, laughing and crying at the same time. "I'm terrified," he admitted, smiling. "Terrified that you'll realize you can do so much better than me." Lily shook her head vehemently. "Impossible. You're everything I've always wanted, everything I've always needed." Nathaniel slid the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit, and then brought her hand to his lips, kissing the ring, then her fingers, then her palm. "You've made me the happiest man in the world," he murmured against her skin. Lily immediately knelt down, kneeling in front of him, and held his face with both hands. "I love you," she said, her voice firm despite the tears. "I love you so much it hurts. I love you in a way I didn't even know was possible." And then she kissed him, a deep, desperate kiss full of all the emotions overflowing inside her. Nathaniel held her tightly, one hand on the back of her neck, the other on her waist, pulling her closer, as if wanting to merge the two into one. When they finally separated, they were breathless, their foreheads pressed together, their hearts beating in the same frantic rhythm. "Thank you," Nathaniel whispered. "For what?" Lily asked, confused. "For saying yes, for loving me, for making me believe I deserve this." Lily held his face more firmly. "You always deserved it, Nathaniel. Always." They stayed like that for a long moment, just holding each other, letting the reality of what had just happened settle in. Then Nathaniel smiled, a mischievous smile that Lily knew well. "Want to see the rest of the surprise?" Lily frowned. "There's more?" Nathaniel laughed and gestured to something behind her. Lily turned and saw a familiar figure emerging from the lit path. Her mother. Margaret Evans was wearing a simple but elegant dress, her hair pulled back in a low bun. She was thinner than before, but her eyes, those green eyes that Lily had inherited, shone with health and happiness. "Mom!" Lily shouted, jumping up and running toward her. The two embraced tightly, crying and laughing at the same time. Lily could feel her mother's bones under her hands, but she could also feel the strength returning, life returning. "You're here," Lily cried. "You're really here." Margaret held her daughter's face with both hands, her eyes shining with tears. "Nathaniel called me," she explained. "He said something important was happening, and that I needed to be here. He sent a car to pick me up from the hospital." Lily turned her face to look at Nathaniel, who was watching the scene with a soft smile. "You did this?" she asked, her voice broken. He nodded. "She needed to be here. For the most important moment of our lives." Lily felt a new wave of tears, but this time they were tears of pure gratitude. Margaret approached Nathaniel, and to everyone's surprise, she knelt down and hugged him. "Thank you," she whispered, "for taking care of my daughter, for loving her the way she deserves." Nathaniel held her hand, squeezing gently. "You don't need to thank me. She's everything to me." Margaret smiled through tears and then looked at the ring on Lily's hand. "Can I see?" Lily extended her hand, and Margaret held it carefully, watching the ring sparkle in the candlelight. "Beautiful," she murmured. "Absolutely perfect." She looked at Nathaniel, her eyes serious. "Take care of her." "With my life," Nathaniel promised, and the sincerity in his voice left no doubt. The three stayed together in the gazebo for a long time, talking, laughing, crying, celebrating. And when night fell completely, and the stars began to appear in the sky, Lily looked around, at her mother who was recovering, at the man she loved more than life itself, at the ring shining on her finger, and realized she had everything she had always dreamed of: love, family, hope, and a future that promised to be absolutely wonderful. Nathaniel pulled her into his lap, holding her firmly, and whispered against her ear, "Now it's just the two of us. No rules, no pretending, just love." Lily smiled, pressing a kiss to his neck. "Just love," she agreed. And in that moment, under the starry sky and surrounded by the people she loved most, Lily knew she had found her happily ever after. But in reality, it was just the beginning. 6 months had passed like a dream. Spring had given way to summer, and now autumn painted the gardens of Fairview Estate in golden and orange tones. The trees dropped leaves that danced in the wind before landing softly on the ground, creating a natural carpet that covered the stone paths. But what had really changed wasn't the season. It was everything. Margaret Evans was completely recovered. The doctors had declared that the cancer was in remission, and although she still needed regular monitoring, she had returned to living, to smiling, to laughing, to making plans for the future. She had moved into a small house that Nathaniel had bought near the mansion, insisting she wanted her independence but loving being close to her daughter. Carter and Cole Industries was stronger than ever. The board had completely stopped questioning Nathaniel's leadership, especially after he presented record results in the last quarter. But more than that, he had proven, to himself and to everyone around him, that his condition didn't define his ability. He was and always would be a born leader. And Lily had blossomed in a way she never imagined possible. She no longer worked as a cleaner. Nathaniel had insisted she didn't need to work, but Lily couldn't stay still. So she had gone back to school, enrolling in a business administration course, with the dream of one day working alongside Nathaniel at the company. He was completely supportive, proud to see her pursue her own goals. And now, on that golden October Saturday, it was their wedding day. Lily stood in the room that had been hers when she first arrived at the mansion, the room that was now full of memories, of moments that had transformed her life. She looked at the mirror, barely recognizing the woman she saw reflected. The wedding dress was absolutely stunning. Made of delicate lace and pure silk, it hugged her body elegantly, with a modest neckline and long sleeves that ended in lace over her hands. The skirt flowed to the floor, ending in a small train that shimmered in the sunlight coming through the window. Her hair was pulled back in a loose, low bun, with some strands framing her face. The veil, simple but beautiful, was held in place by a small pearl comb. She looked like a princess, but felt like herself, just the best version. A soft knock on the door made her turn. "Come in," she said. The door opened and Margaret entered, her eyes immediately filling with tears when she saw her daughter. "Oh, Lily," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You look absolutely beautiful." Lily felt her own tears threatening to fall, but she blinked quickly. She couldn't ruin her makeup now. Margaret approached, holding her daughter's hands. "I'm so proud of you," she said, her voice firm despite the tears. "So proud of the woman you've become, and so happy to see you so in love, so loved." Lily squeezed her mother's hands. "None of this would be possible without you, Mom. You taught me to be strong, you taught me to fight, you taught me to love." The two embraced, crying and laughing at the same time, holding each other tightly. When they separated, Margaret wiped away the tears and smiled. "It's time. He's waiting for you." The wedding would be in the garden, the same garden where Nathaniel had proposed. They had decided on an intimate ceremony, with only their closest friends and family. They didn't need hundreds of guests. They didn't need ostentation. They only needed each other. When Lily came down the stairs and reached the entrance to the garden, her heart began to beat irregularly. The garden had been transformed once again. White chairs were arranged in rows on either side of an aisle, covered with white rose petals. There were flowers everywhere, roses, lilies, peonies, creating a sea of white and soft pink. And at the end of the aisle, under an arch covered in flowers, stood Nathaniel. Lily felt the air leave her lungs. He was absolutely impeccable. The suit was a dark navy blue, almost black, perfectly tailored to highlight his broad shoulders. The tie was a silver tone that matched his eyes perfectly. His hair was combed back, but some rebellious strands fell over his forehead. And his eyes, those grey eyes that saw her in a way no one else did, were fixed on her, shining with an emotion so intense that Lily felt her legs weaken. The music began, a soft instrumental version of a romantic song, and Margaret held her daughter's arm. "Let's go," she whispered. They began walking down the aisle, and Lily couldn't take her eyes off Nathaniel. He watched her as if she were the most precious thing in the world, as if he couldn't believe she was there, walking toward him. When they reached the altar, Margaret kissed her daughter's forehead and placed her hand in Nathaniel's. "Take care of her," she whispered to him. "Always," Nathaniel promised, his voice husky with emotion. Margaret smiled and went to sit in the first row, next to some close friends. Lily and Nathaniel stood facing each other, their hands intertwined, their eyes fixed on one another. The officiant began to speak, but Lily barely heard the words. She was completely lost in that gaze, in that presence, in that love. When it was time for the vows, Nathaniel took a deep breath and began to speak. "Lily," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "When you came into my life, I was trapped by my condition, by others' expectations, by my own lack of hope. But you freed me. You showed me that life isn't about limitations but about possibilities, that love isn't about perfection but about acceptance." He squeezed her hands. "I promise to love you every day of my life. I promise to support you in everything you want to do. I promise to make you laugh when you're sad, hold you when you're scared, and remind you every day how incredible you are. You are my truth, my light, my everything." Lily was crying openly now, tears running down her face, but she didn't care. It was her turn. "Nathaniel," she began, her voice trembling but firm, You saved me. Not just financially, not just by helping my mother. You saved my soul. You showed me that I deserved to be loved, that I deserved to be seen, that I deserved to dream. You gave me hope when I had none. You gave me love when I thought I'd never find it." She released one of his hands and touched his face, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. "I promise to love you unconditionally. I promise to always see you as the incredible man you are. I promise to be by your side in every moment, in good times and bad. I promise to make you happy every day of my life, because you are my everything, my love, my home, my forever." Nathaniel closed his eyes, tears running down his face. When he opened them again, there was so much love there that Lily felt her heart explode. The officiant smiled. "Then, by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife." He paused, his eyes shining. "You may kiss the bride." Lily didn't even wait. She leaned down and kissed Nathaniel with all the intensity she felt, all the love, all the gratitude, all the happiness. Nathaniel held her tightly, one hand on the back of her neck, the other on her waist, pulling her closer, kissing her as if it were the last time. The guests applauded and stood, but Lily and Nathaniel barely noticed. They were completely lost in each other, in the moment, in the absolute certainty that they had found their forever. When they finally separated, they were breathless, smiling through tears. "Hi, wife," Nathaniel whispered, his voice husky. "Hi, husband," Lily whispered back. The reception was perfect. There was live music, delicious food, and laughter that echoed through the garden. But the most special moment was when it came time for the newlyweds' dance. Nathaniel led Lily to the center of the improvised dance area, and the music began. The same waltz they had danced at the gala months ago. Lily slid into his lap, as she had done that night, and they began to move. Nathaniel led her with confidence, his hands holding her waist firmly but gently, his eyes never leaving hers. Everyone around watched, but for Lily and Nathaniel, it was as if they were alone in the world. "Do you remember the first time we danced like this?" Nathaniel whispered. "Like it was yesterday," Lily replied, smiling. "I was already in love with you that night," he confessed. "I just didn't have the courage to admit it." Lily laughed, her eyes shining. "Me too." They danced until the music ended, and when the last note sounded, Nathaniel pulled her into a deep kiss that drew applause and whistles from the guests. When night fell and the stars began to appear, Nathaniel and Lily stepped away from the party for a moment, walking to the edge of the garden, where they could see the city glowing in the distance. Nathaniel held her hand, intertwining their fingers. "Happy?" he asked. Lily turned her face to him, her eyes shining. "More than I ever imagined possible." Nathaniel pulled her closer, wrapping her in his arms. "Now it's just the two of us," he murmured against her hair. "No rules, no pretending, just love." Lily smiled, pressing a kiss to his neck. "And I never want to leave your arms again." "You'll never have to," he promised. And as they stood there under the starry sky, embraced, Lily realized her life had come full circle. She had started invisible, fighting just to survive. And now she was being seen, loved, celebrated. She had started alone, and now she had a family. She had started without hope, and now she had a bright future ahead. This wasn't an ending. It was just the beginning of a lifetime of love, adventures and moments that would make everything worthwhile. And Lily couldn't be more grateful. Because sometimes, when you least expect it, life gives you exactly what you always needed. And for her, that gift had a name: Nathaniel Carter, her love, her husband, her forever. Sometimes, life puts us exactly where we need to be. Lily walked into that office invisible, carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. But Nathaniel saw her, truly saw her, when no one else did. And in that gaze, everything changed. She learned that true love doesn't demand perfection, only truth. That being seen is the greatest gift anyone can receive, and that sometimes pretending to be something can lead us to discover who we really are. Because in the end, it wasn't money that saved Lily. It was love. And perhaps deep down, this story is also about us. About how we all deserve to be seen, to be loved, to be whole. If this story touched your heart, leave a like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments where you're listening from. And if you feel it was really worth your time, click the Super Thanks button. Your gesture makes all the difference and helps us keep bringing you stories like this.